Hello and welcome back to the Restricted View podcast.
Hello everybody, thank you for joining us once again.
Yes, as always, I'm Deborah.
I'm Chris. And we've got quite a busy week this week actually. After our catch-up episode last week, we were lucky enough to be invited to two different shows in the last week, which we saw one night after the other.
Yeah, so kind of back-to-back situation.
And we also have there's a little bit of drama that has emerged in the theatre world with equity getting involved and whatnot. So we're going to briefly address that as well.
Yes, indeed.
But yes, we were invited to see Glacier Lake by Andrew Cartmel.
Yes, by Thursday Theatre.
By Thursday Theatre,
yes.
And that was at the OSO, which I've forgotten what it stands for now. Sorting office, the old sorting office.
Yes, but OSO Art Centre in
Art
Barnes,
Centre.
And we also got invited to see Abigail by Fury Theatre, which was at the Space Theatre on the Isle of Dogs, I believe.
Yes, two venues we've never been to before, so
yes.
That was very exciting. We're excited to talk about it. But first, before we get into that, we would like to discuss a little bit of dramatic news.
So, if you're involved in the theatre world or following theatre news, you will have heard that Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella is now closing on the 12th of June. And this is big news because, firstly, it was booking until February 2023, I believe, so long period. But also because, as it turns out, it seems to have been announced on social media first, so news outlets announced it before the current cast, and also the future cast, which were already, kind of signed up to do the parts, knew about it.
Well, Deborah stumbled across it literally as it broke, so there's a very good chance that Deborah and I knew about it before most, if not all, of the cast.
Yes,
and TodayTix and other vendors were still selling tickets when it was announced for February 2023.
Yeah, so so
they didn't know about it.
It's quite dramatic in many ways, and also very unfair to the cast and creators working on the show who didn't know about this. And I think that's the crux of the matter, the fact that people were told via Twitter that they had lost their jobs.
Yeah, and so the original cast, the contracts are usually a year, and I believe that was the case for the Cinderella. The original cast contracts were coming to an end, coming to be renewed
in July.
Yeah. Right? So a month away. So a lot of them were leaving. I don't know if they were all leaving. Presumably some of them might have been staying, but it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. Regardless, they obviously had their contracts terminated a month early. Which is obviously very, very poor and definitely a bad thing. But I actually feel even more sorry for the upcoming cast
mm-hmm.
who had a job coming up for here's contract coming up,
yeah.
And that's been taken from them. So it's the thing is I don't know. I can only assume that these contracts have clauses which basically allow them to do whatever they want. I mean, Deborah and I once got kicked out of our flat because the lease contracts tend to say, oh, if the landlord gets the whim, they can just kick you out for no real reason.
Exactly. But I think that is the big issue, and that's why a lot of actors, some of them due to be on the show on the new cast, and some of the current cast spoke up about it, and equity got involved.
Yeah.
And
this isn't the first drama regarding this production. Andrew Webber allegedly also berated the cast at one point. I know this has been denied, but lots of different sources have said it happened. So it's allegedly he berated the cast after a bad review.
We could all safely say that Cinderella, this production of Cinderella, has been shrouded in difficulties.
Yeah, he also shut down the production temporarily under the guise because of Omicron, but it was very clearly because he was trying to rebrand it.
Yeah, because he got a bad review, yeah. And then yes, so
as far as I can tell, he hasn't been honest and forthcoming throughout this entire debacle.
Absolutely not, and I think that it's also in very poor taste to announce the closure. First of all, again, announce the closure on social media, but in the announcement say, "Oh yes, and we're going to Broadway next year." Mm-hmm. It kind of just feels like, oh, good for you, you're going to Broadway. What about all the other people who are jobless now because of this impromptu decision? And also, I mean, I cannot confirm this. I don't really have the sources. This is a hearsay, but it sounds like all the details for the closure of the show had been negotiated the week before. So it had all been closed and done before, like 2 or 3 days before it was announced. So surely they had time to announce the cast first. And even the lead, if you think about it, even Carrie Hope Fletcher, she wasn't at the theater on the day it was announced. So she found out. She said herself that she found out with a message from a colleague.
So we knew before her.
Sounds like we knew before.
Which is
no,
ridiculous.
because the thing is, they did tell the cast that they're performing on the day. So they were the ones that got the news. They got the news directly, but she was one of the people who were.
It sounds more dramatic if we knew before that.
Yes, we definitely might have known before people who were due to the actress who's due to make her West End debut as Cinderella. So that's appalling. And
as really. I say, I'm guessing that because the contracts have clauses which effectively allow this. So I'm not obviously we're not condoning that. So whilst what they're doing may not be against employment law, it's definitely unfair and bad practice and to be condemned. And there was indeed an equity-led protest, I believe, outside the theatre. So yeah, I mean,
they are demanding that the cast get paid for the extra month, the month that they are not going to be working now. And also that the new cast get compensated somehow for having, because I can only assume, and you have more experience than this of this than me, that once you sign for a job, then you kind of relax for a little bit, and in such a difficult industry, you find, okay, I went to lots of auditions, now I have this job, I'm gonna settle for a few months.
I mean, never relax fully, but yes, certainly there's a massive element of relief which has been robbed from them now. But yeah, so it's like I said, I suspect it's technically not actually illegal, and there's no, and technically he can do this, but
doesn't mean it's right.
But it doesn't mean it's right, and Restricted View definitely would like to lend, or not lend, but throw our weight behind the condemnation of Andrew Weber's behaviour.
Yes,
it is not good. Do better, Andrew. So as we said in the intro, this week we were invited to 2 shows. We'd like to talk about both of them now. So the first one we were invited to was we saw on Tuesday on its opening night on the 4th, I think it was.
Yes.
And this is Glacier Lake at the OSO Arts Centre. So this is running until the 8th. As time of recording, not much time left to see this. But the writer does have another show coming up shortly, which we'll talk about as well briefly at the end. But so Glacier Lake it saw itself as a thriller.
Mm-hmm.
With which I would more have called it a political. I think when we wrote up about it, a political piece with a thriller vibe.
There's definitely a thriller vibe, yes.
So essentially, it's by Andrew Cartmel. And it was directed by
Conrad Blakemore.
Conrad Blakemore, yes, indeed. And it stars Sadie Pepperell, Jamie Hutchins, and Colin Hill. It's a 3-person play. As I said, as I implied, it's set in a single location of this lake house by a lake that was formed by a glacier.
Or used to be.
And very early on, they do offer. There is some allusion to the climate change issue, and it's interesting. It's introduced pretty much immediately, in quite a dramatic way, and then kind of left alone whilst we then build up this mysterious thriller vibe, as I suggested. So basically, Sadie Pepperell plays Sandy, and Colin Hill plays her father Otto. They're living, or at least it wasn't entirely clear if this is their permanent residence or if it's kind of like a holiday home.
No, but I kind of got the feeling that they are there. They really love this place, and it's a haven. It's kind of an escape.
Yes, and later, and also towards the end, Otto kind of implies that he's very much there on purpose.
Yes, yes.
But yes, and a childhood friend. So a childhood friend of Sandy's, who's also the son of a lifelong friend of her father Otto, named Daniel, has recently arrived to stay because he is essentially being chased by bad people, and that's kind of all we get for a while. And so for the next kind of maybe 30 minutes of the play or so, after the initial kind of dramatic opening alluding to climate change, it's kind of just about introducing us to the characters and their relations to each other, and there's some dramatic tension with what is going on with Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
he's not a threat or anything. He is kind of the outsider coming to disturb the peace.
He does bring the threat in
He
with
brings
him,
the threat,
right?
but he's actually very. I mean, Jamie Hutchins plays him incredibly, very likably.
Yes,
Is that a
he
word?
definitely does.
Likably.
Yeah, he's very likable.
He's very
Yes.
likable. He's very level-headed. He's very rational. He's very he's very kind. There's a scene, in fact, in which Sandy essentially makes advances on
Daniel.
and Daniel rejects them because he doesn't want to take advantage of her. And there's a lot more to that scene, as later revealed. Originally, it's not entirely clear why originally when the scene plays out, you're kind of thinking, I don't see why you would be taking advantage, you know.
Yes.
But basically, anyway, the point is that scene. There is more revealed later on, and that scene kind of does solidify him as a decent person, which I think is very important for what is to come.
Yes, and it's actually a lot of this is once you get there's a somewhat of a reveal in the second half of the play, and a lot of the first half makes more sense once you know that, which is nice, which is a great way to kind of be surprised and think, oh, that's why they were doing that, you know.
Yes, and I much prefer that than telling, you know, a lot of people like to tell stories out of non chronological order, but I much prefer having it told chronologically, and then having new context and new. Having sort of recontextualized.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, so after we've had in that period, we then have a cliffhanger interval, and followed by the second half where things basically really kick off, and we now understand why this climate change seed was planted in our brains in the opening scene, because basically the fact that Daniel's been hunted. And the fact that climate change exists are actually very much linked.
Yes, and the fact that Otto and Sandy are in the lake house.
Yes,
it's also linked.
Yes, it's exactly. First of all, I a few things to address. The play is about an hour. How long was it? About an hour and 20 minutes, I think.
And I heard Andrew Cartmel, the writer, say that it was 90 minutes.
Oh, 90 minutes. Okay.
So it's 90 minutes without an interval.
And it felt 10 minutes shorter. There you go.
Yes, there you
That's
go.
a good sign. So the interval was very much a necessity caused by the venue. Deborah and I did. I remember thinking it was strange. We spoke to. The producer Alistair Shanks afterwards, and he confirmed my suspicions that they probably wouldn't have wanted an interval if they could. And I definitely don't think Andrew Cartmel wrote it with an interval in mind. I think they put the interval in the most logical place they could.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
I understand why it was there, but I actually do wish it wasn't there, and I think the cast and crew mostly agree with that as well.
Yes, and I think the location, despite the problem, I guess, with the break, the location itself suited the play in many ways because it was set in one room, even though the lake was there, ever present.
Well, it's a small, intimate space, isn't it?
It adds to that sense of foreboding as well, that there's nowhere else to go. This is where they are. So I think it suited the small venue nicely, and I think the director did a good job of kind of using that space. And the actors kind of owned it as well, as best as they could, which I appreciated. Yeah.
So something I found interesting was the kind of the parallel between the way the audience is kind of given misinformation, so to speak, or at least half truths, and the parallel between that and the climate change and the misinformation that was given to the public about climate change, which is very much what this play is about. It's not just climate change in general, but it's very specifically the misinformation campaign in the 90s, would it be? I think they do say. I do remember, for example, like Al Gore did a talk / documentary called An Inconvenient Truth.
Yes.
Very famously. I remember watching that in school, what would have been the early noughties. And I remember at the time thinking, I actually remember there's a piece of that, part of that stuck with me from that, is he shows a bar graph from that and says, scientists are saying, or not scientists, some people are saying, well, again, some scientists, as is the point, some people are saying that this climate change is part of a natural cycle. And he shows a bar chart where it's like, yes, look, this is how the cycle goes, and it's like very minor modulation, and then this is where we are now, and it's like shot right up. So it's like, sure, there is some fluctuation, but this is not to this level. And I do remember that back from the noughties, so I guess I've been aware it's very early, but then you can't forget it. I forgot about it for 20 years.
Climate change.
Yeah.
I think it's always been in the news to a certain level, and I think we all been taught, like Chris and I are millennials, and I think when we were in school, people just talked about recycling, and I think now the conversation has moved on, and we are all, I mean, to me, it's like holding people accountable. Who are the people who can do, not that you shouldn't recycle, but you can do your own part, but then who are the people who actually have everything in their hands to make changes?
Yeah, and this play is very much about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Accountability as well as individual responsibility.
Yeah.
And I thought it was something that I don't want to speak too much about as to spoilers. Obviously, I mean, it is closing, as I said, very soon. But it's always potential these things will come back.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So I find it interesting that there's a kind of a sins of the father element in this play, which I actually felt was not massively explored. Mm-hmm. It's in fact I don't think it's really explored or mentioned at all, except it is the case, right?
Yeah.
That there's this whole sins of the father and people suffering for the sins of their father, and the question of whether it's like privilege and benefiting from
a bad thing,
from the sins of your father,
Yeah.
even if you're not committing them, even if you're benefiting unbeknownst to you, and
Yeah.
what that means, and is there a price to be paid on that? Should there be, that's something that it doesn't really get into, which I found it could have done, and I think it's actually good that it didn't within the runtime it was working with. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there is a longer play in here potentially.
Yeah.
There is a 2-hour 2-act play in here potentially where it could be fleshed out, and stuff like that could be themes like that could be addressed. Now perhaps first of all, if the writer didn't have those ideas and doesn't have the ideas for how to do that, then obviously don't force that. It's obviously good not to just write it for the sake of writing it.
Of course.
I just feel that it could. I feel that there is the potential for it to be a longer, more fleshed out play. Mm-hmm.
Especially because there's this sense of, when we talk about climate change, we talk about future generations, right? And it's interesting to think back, and they are thinking back.
And it pretty much solely does that. Thinks back, right? Interestingly enough.
Which is interesting. It's a different, and in itself, a different take, I think. So yes, I agree with you. There's potential for more, but I do enjoy bite-sized plays, and this is one of them.
I do think that's the thing. I do think to flesh that out, it would fundamentally change the play, though, as well. I think it would struggle to. It might need more. It definitely would probably need more than the 3 cast members in order to do that. It would probably also need potentially to have more. Great number of locations. I mean, maybe not, but it would definitely compromise, I think, to a certain extent, the intimate, claustrophobic feeling of it.
Yes, it would, I think.
So
I think it does the job well for what it intends to be.
Yeah, but it does, as I say, it does kind of evoke thoughts of these themes that are kind of hinted at, but then never actually addressed on the stage, because that's not what it's trying to address. It's trying to address this one particular thing and give it the time and love it required in the writing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I think I said I wrote in our write up on Instagram, the last line I think which I wrote was the closing line, which was you'll be taken in by the mystery and then challenged by the message, or something along those lines. I think that basically sums up this play very much. I think it was a competent production, well put together. I think all 3 cast members did a good job, and I do think. I guess I do kind of wish the other themes have been delved into a little bit more.
Okay.
Maybe I do want a 2-hour version of this play.
Oh, right. This is very rare from Chris. He always looks at runtimes and is like, oh my god, it's too long.
Well, that's when you see 3-hour plays and you're like, this really has to justify.
Oh, and we'll be talking about one soon enough.
A 3-hour runtime really needs to justify itself. But yeah, no, I think, but I definitely enjoyed it. As I said, it's closing very soon, but who knows? It can always come back.
Yes.
Did you enjoy it as well, Deborah? Didn't you?
I did enjoy it. Yes, I was. I like seeing different topics being dealt on stage.
Yeah,
and I think he did that really,
I feel we're going
really
to see
well.
more. We're going to see more of this type of thing.
As I said to you when we left the theatre, I said to Chris that I think that climate change is going to be is going to feature in the future plays, and by future I just mean a short-term future. I think there'll be a lot of that.
Because that's all we have. Because of climate change.
Yeah, well, because we'll be dead soon.
Exactly. But yeah, no, but I definitely found the themes evocative and an interesting take on those themes. Mm-hmm. And I do think there were some clever parallels in the writing between the way information is handled.
Yeah.
The reveal was. I also feel that the reveal was dramatic without being melodramatic.
Yeah.
Now there were melodramatic elements in the dialogue,
especially towards the end. I think we even commented on Instagram. Go check out we have a reel and we have a short review of this play as well on our Instagram. So check that out.
And I do think there are elements of the writing were a little bit too melodramatic for me, and I personally would have liked that to be reined in a little bit. I do understand where it was coming from, especially at the end.
Yeah.
But I think I guess I think it's funny for the reveal to be handled so well and so maturely without resorting to cliches, and then to kind of be undercut a little bit by what I see as a bit of melodrama. Nothing wrong with melodrama, but I didn't see this as a melodramatic play.
Yeah.
But perhaps that was a deliberate directorial choice. I don't know. But yes, that's become my main criticism, that the writing, whilst mostly very good, definitely could be tightened up in some places. The writing gets very very quick and punchy and intense in the second half. The first half is less so, but obviously that is kind of. It's kind of almost a harder thing to do. It's the harder thing to write, kind of when you're just trying to set the scene and flesh out the characters a little bit.
Yeah.
But in fairness, I've seen plays where that part of a play goes on for most of the play, and it gets very boring. I think they had the right amount of build-up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then before you start to get before the build-up gets too long, everything kicks off.
Yes.
Which I really appreciated. So yeah, writing definitely could have been tightened up in some places, but I thought it was very good, and I would personally have preferred the melodramatic elements to be taken out. But yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
We'll be looking out for Andrew Cartmell's new play. I think he has another one coming in July, I believe.
Yes,
As Real
July,
as Anything.
So I have it here. It's July 5th to July 9th, 2022.
At the Hen and Chicken Theatre Bar in Islington, I believe.
Yeah.
So
As Real as Anything. A serious comedy by Andrew Cartmell.
The fact that it's called a serious comedy already makes me want to go
it's
see it.
going to be directed by Jenny Eastop. So we're definitely going to go check that out. And if you like what the sound of Glacier Lake, then we definitely recommend you also go and check out Andrew Cartmell's next work.
Yeah, and follow Thursday Theatre as well on Instagram, because they'll be posting their new shows.
Yes, it was their first show, Thursday
Yes.
Theatre. They actually, I wanted to mention that they were set up during lockdown. I think we spoke briefly to Jamie Hutchins, the actor who played Daniel, after the production, and I think he mentioned that he said it kind of made me think a little bit of Staged.
Yes, me too.
Where basically, all these artists and creators were kind of out of work now because of the pandemic, and this group kind of formed to give themselves some purpose, something to do, something to work on, a creative outlet, and they basically kind of got together on Zoom.
On Thursdays.
On Thursday, that was it. Yeah. So I think that's a lovely story. And now they've finally got something on stage.
Yeah, that's really
after
exciting.
The pandemic, which is great. So I think that's a lovely story, and I do think Thursday. I was impressed with Thursday Theatre's, especially for a first production. I was impressed with their professionalism and conduct.
Yes,
just the way everything was put together.
It was lovely.
So yeah, it was a very enjoyable experience, and thank you very much to Thursday Theatre for reaching out to us and inviting us to come along and review the show. But yeah, so Glacier Lake, unfortunately closing on the 8th. If it comes back, do try and check it out, and if it doesn't, check out Andrew Cartmell's next show, As Real as Anything, from July 5th to July 9th at the Hen and Chicken Theatre Bar.
So we are also kindly invited to see Abigail by Fury Theatre, and we did that on last Wednesday. So we saw Glacier Lake on the Tuesday, then saw Abigail on the Wednesday. So Abigail first of all, I just want to start by saying that I still don't know very much about the Salem witch trials. But I had heard of Abigail Williams, and I know that she is often portrayed as a villain. So she's used as a character she's like almost a character device in a lot of TV, books.
Almost like a puppet villain though as well, right? Because she was a child.
She was a child. She was sorry, I never said, but she's one of the main accusers in the Salem witch trial.
Yeah, she was 11 or 12 apparently at the time when it happened. I think she was the first to accuse with another friend of hers.
Yeah.
And then she apparently disappears in the history books apparently shortly after the witch trials take place.
Yeah, so after the witch trials, apparently the last we know of Abigail is that she was in Boston
Well,
somewhere.
that's a rumor. So
That is a rumour.
There was an individual in Boston, right?
There was an individual. There's someone in Boston who died in prison as a prostitute.
Yeah.
And it's based on that hook
The speculation
that Laura Turner and Stephen Gillard wrote this play. What was happening there in Boston? Why was she in Boston? What was she doing there? And what happened to her? Why did she die in prison?
It's just like what speculative historical fiction, I guess you
It's
call
speculative historical fiction. That's exactly what it is.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a really interesting take. I particularly always love seeing historical figures like approached from a different angle. And I don't think there is a lot focusing on Abigail. And you can understand, I mean, she was a child. That's usually things focus on the whole process rather than Abigail herself.
It's interesting you say that, and it's true. There is not a lot focusing on Abigail, and yet she's in a lot. Like,
yeah, and she is kind of she's super well known as well as an important
I
figure
think she was
during
in
that
Legends
time.
of Tomorrow once.
I think she was too. Yeah.
And I remember I played a video game once, which is based in Salem in the modern day, but the witch trials obviously come into it, and she's definitely mentioned in that. I think you see her ghost in that or something as well.
Yeah, so she appears everywhere. We don't know much about her, and that's okay. And we'll never know much about her. I think we have to be able to sit with that thought.
The only thing we know is that she did this terrible thing.
She did this terrible thing. We don't know why she did the terrible thing, and that's kind of one of the other things that this show tries to explore. Why would she have done that? Why would she have accused? Because she was a girl accusing women of witchcraft, right?
And I did speculate before we ever saw it that there would be an element of
Abuse?
No, an element of women being taught, like brought up to view non-conventional women, or women who are outside the pristine angel of the house, as Deborah as a concept that Deborah taught me about during her PhD days. Women who aren't that kind of typical angel of the house, they're different, and therefore they're wrong and they're evil, and weaponizing, quote unquote, nice women, proper women, quote unquote, to weaponizing those women against the other women, and actually making them the bullets.
It's othering the different, right? And
Yeah.
kind of in this process, we are all guilty of. I'm sure we all have done that to some extent, and Abigail clearly has done it to a very great extent.
Yeah, well, it's like even when you see even when you see today, like for example, I don't know, like a woman who you see, I don't know, like the stereotypes that women are women are catty or whatever, right? A lot of that at that time that's perpetrated by men, right? And women are basically being taught to see other women as competition.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's kind of that's the. I mean, obviously, my understanding of this is so basic compared to Deborah's, and indeed Laura Turner's and Stephen Gillard's, no doubt. But that's kind of my interpretation. That's the kind of modern version of it.
Yeah, I think we're still taught. Obviously, if you, I come from the school of thought that believes we live in a patriarchal structure, and because of that, we are all victims and perpetrators in many ways, and I think that's what the show depicts.
Yeah, that's
right?
exactly. Women can actually be perpetrators of the patriarchy, although they have been conditioned to do so. It's very
men are victims of the patriarchy as well.
Yeah, and women are perpetrators as well. But even when they're perpetrators, they're tools almost to the men, weaponizing them. I'm not really qualified to talk about this.
If you remember, if any of you has seen or read indeed The Handmaid's Tale, you remember that there are women there who support the regime because they are benefiting from it, but also they're being oppressed by it.
Just that there's poor people who will vote for
Tories.
Well, yeah, I was going to say economically right wing ideals.
Let's just call it what it is.
But yeah, there are people in economically struggling situations who will vote for right wing governments who want to take away their rights.
Yes,
it's just the way it is.
It's always a surprise, but at the same time there is. You can understand where it comes from sometimes, even though it's difficult to. So I thought that the idea to approach Abigail was really clever, and the play. So what can we say now about the play itself? Right, it is very much a work in progress. Still, I think that the cast. We actually were there for a Q&A with the cast and the director and the co-director. And they kind of did say this is a work in progress. They asked for feedback actually in every seat.
Very much a work in progress. Not just, they were
Yeah,
very adamant about that.
Yeah, in every seat when you got there was a piece of paper saying, please send us emails, tell us what you think, where can we improve. I think they're very open about that, which I really appreciate. The show was set in, not set, but the production happened at the Space Theatre, as we said before, and it's a converted church.
Yeah, I assume a deconsecrated church as well, given what went on.
Given the subject, and I think there's the one problem with that is that if you are not in the first couple of rows, you did really struggle. It was very much restricted view. We lived up to our name,
and the acoustics weren't ideal.
No.
So I do think that's unfortunate. I think the director definitely needs to have a look at sightlines and acoustics, the very basics, basically, how well the audience can see and hear. Next whether
next stage of this,
whether they are the same venue or a different venue, I think that kind of definitely needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's we struggled a bit to see, especially because there were quite a few scenes happen kind of on the floor level, which made it hard to see because there was no.
Yes, an enormous amount actually takes place on the floor. Yeah.
But then, having said that, I did enjoy the ambition. I did enjoy the themes it tackled. I was like enthralled by the subject and how it was portraying everything. I do think that it's a little long. And we heard that it started as a one-woman show, and I think it was shorter, and they ended up adding to it. And don't get me wrong, I much prefer to have more characters than having a one-person show. But I do think that maybe a few cuts would make it a little snappier.
Yeah, I think they're aware of that. I mean, so remember, actually, during the Q&A, I remember one of the questions that was asked by another member of the audience was, the play kind of has two endings.
Yes.
And he kind of I can't remember exactly how he phrased his question, but he kind of said he felt it kind of ended there nicely, but then
he didn't need the second ending.
He wanted to know why they put that back, but why? I think maybe he was aware that at one point had been the ending, and he was I'm not sure. Okay. But he was asking basically, why did you feel the need to put in this other ending? And there is an element of symmetry with the beginning in the second ending, and an element of secular nature. I guess the themes of cycles was not one that I had really absorbed throughout the performance. But I guess it is actually there.
Oh yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah, but I hadn't really thought about it. I guess, but you obviously had, but I hadn't. And I thought it was over.
Yes.
At that point, and I was actually thinking.
You're ready to clap, I think.
I was ready to clap, and I was like, I like the ending better. I thought that's a good ending.
So my reaction to it was, I also thought it was over. I was surprised when they came back, but I actually like the fact I like the full circleness of it, as much as like this is very much, this show explores the cycle of abuse and how people who are victims become abusers, as we mentioned, and how it keeps going, and how the justice system often fails. Not just women, I think women especially in this play, but it fails people in general, right? And I did like it. I think perhaps it extended itself a little too long, that last scene. Maybe just seeing the ending being like the beginning.
Well, I think your perception of this last scene is going to be slightly warped by the fact that you're actually surprised it's taking place. That takes a moment to get over. That wasn't the ending. Oh, right, sorry. And that obviously takes a moment to recontextualize your mind. So perhaps the answer will be, if they want to keep that second ending in, to make it less look like it's over, which is going to be hard to do, I guess. But
sure, yeah, but I think that's maybe an alternative for them to consider if they want to.
The reason I brought that up was because you were saying you think it could do with some cuts, some editing. I think I agree with you, and that's personally for me, that's one cut I'd make, very simple cut of an entire scene I'd make just there. But that's obviously, Deborah doesn't fully agree with that. You like that ending.
No, I do like that ending. Yeah.
I think that's probably the problem with why it has two endings, because
some people like it, some people don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is no complaint to the actress. I think the actress playing Mercy. Mercy is Abigail's friend, Lucy Cooper. I think she was very good, and she played her part really well, like an almost ingenue in a way. She didn't really know things, and she was very naive and gullible. However, this is one character that I would perhaps leave out. as I said to you before, I
That's
think
even more dramatic than cutting a scene.
Well,
You're
there
like
you
a
go.
character.
There you go. Not that I think that there is another character in the play Millie who fulfills the same function.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think,
And they kind of go through a similar journey.
and they go through a very similar journey as well. So I don't know how necessary she is, but I think as again she can be kept, but maybe other things need to be tightened in other places.
Yeah.
But this is just a suggestion. I'm no playwright, and I don't pretend to be.
You're no playwright, but if that's the impression you had coming out of it, it's still valuable feedback.
Sure.
That two characters ultimately went on the same journey.
Yeah, so I really liked Laura Turnham's Abigail. I think she was angry at the right level of angry. She made me feel angry at Abigail, but also feel sorry for her. I understood her situation.
It's a nuanced role, and it's a nuanced performance of a nuanced role, right?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I think Solvey's character, Solvey is, I think, one of the witches who was accused, or who Abigail accused, played by Sophie Jane Corner. I also liked her performance, and I actually, weirdly enough now, having just said to cut a character, I wish I'd seen more of her.
Yeah, I said that as well.
Yes.
There's an element of her, because she's essentially a ghost, right? She's a memory or a ghost of one of the people who Abigail condemned to death. Essentially condemned to death.
Yeah.
And she comes and goes a lot, and actually that caused some staging issues at times. Her coming and going. What I would like to do is have her on stage basically all the time while Abigail's there, certainly, and that would help remove certain staging issues. And also, I really like the idea of her being there at all times, because towards the end of the play, she started staying there, and Abigail was able to was aware of her presence, was able to have silent interactions with her whilst speaking to the characters, and I really liked all that stuff. Now maybe they tried that, I don't know. We didn't ask. Maybe if it was too much, it undercut the kind of the gravity, the impact of when she was there. But I definitely, if it hasn't been tried, I would love to see a version of this where she's constantly on stage as a looming threat, because I loved her presence, and I loved the music, the use of music to highlight her presence. Was great as well.
Yes, I agree. Talking about this now, I kind of find that I have a reason why she wouldn't be there all the time, because in a way, the more she stays, the more Abigail comes to terms with who she is.
Sure.
Right, and then that presence highlights that. However, again, I still think there's a version of this play with her on stage all the time, and I apologize to the actress who will have fewer breaks, but I would like to see that, because I think that would be really interesting as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's really exciting to see new productions. Like, it's too exciting to see what's being cooked up, in the small theatres of London, to leave the West End sometimes. And look, we started this podcast today talking about a very, very big producer, one of the biggest ones that we have, who does not treat his artists and crew properly. Maybe it's time for a change and for like a renewal of the people in power, and it's just nice to see all these things kind of bubbling up under the surface. Yeah,
you mentioned you enjoyed it, so did I. But I just want to point out that when we were speaking to Laura afterwards, and and someone else, the assistant director, also had exactly the same interaction, where they said, thanks for coming. Did you enjoy the show? And then they kind of catch themselves and use the word enjoy for such a heavy play.
Yes.
And something I said, my response to that was, no, I don't mind using the word enjoy, because I enjoy being challenged by art, right? And I just want to make the point that is very much what this show is trying to do. I don't think they'll mind me saying this show is not trying to be a really fun night out. It's meant to be. It's art as an art. It's trying to be moving art as an art gallery. It's not trying to be a musical.
Yes, definitely.
And that's just something to be aware of, right? Because not everyone, some people go to theatre for one, some people go to theatre for the other, some people go to theatre for both. But you definitely ideally want to know what you're going to.
You want to know before you go, yes.
So this is not a spooky thriller, exciting Salem witch trial thing.
And it's also
because Salem witch trials can be played up like that. It can be played up as kooky, spooky fun.
Yes, and it can be played up as mostly via like the historical lens, which I don't even think this is doing, even though it is historical. If that makes sense, it's kind of very much exploring heavy themes, heavy situation. How women are failed by society over and over again. Even good men, and this is what I found interesting. I'll go back to this in a minute. But even good men can also don't really have much they can do. They also have their arms tied a lot of the time. They can't do.
Do you want to see more of him actually? The Marshall character.
Yes.
I think maybe we need to see more of him actually.
We might need to see more of him.
Because
for balance, right?
Yeah, because not just for balance of representation of good and bad men, but he's kind of introduced early on as a potential threat, and then kind of goes away for a long time, and then it's revealed he was indeed. I think I trusted him personally, but Abigail doesn't.
Which is fair enough.
There's more. There's a lot. This is the thing, right? And this is why we're this is much more of a discussion than a review.
Yes, definitely.
Because it's a work in progress. As we said, it wouldn't be fair to kind of. It's 100% rough around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
They're well aware of that themselves. They want to. This is not the end for Abigail. It's the beginning for Abigail, and there's definitely a lot of improvement that can be made. And there's definitely, but because the thing it's trying to deal with so much. Like I said, like the fact that it's only just now that I realise actually that Marshall character needs. There's a lot more that could be done with him.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, the play as it stands at the moment feels a little bit too long.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I think it could be made even longer in a way that would actually feel tighter. There's look.
Sorry, we're being contradictory.
But seriously, there's a lot here, and it's going to be a tough thing to do, right? It's not just a matter of it's not just a matter of, I don't know, of trying to tighten up a piece of light entertainment so it runs better. It's a lot more complicated than that, and there's a lot. They have a lot of work ahead of them as a result. But I think they've got a really nice foundation there.
Oh, definitely.
And their lofty ambitions definitely can be realised by continuing down this path.
Yeah, I agree. And as I was going to say before, I cut myself because I knew I was going in two different directions at the same time. But Fury Theatre, then it's a female-led theatre company. But we spoke to Laura, who funded it, and she said that she was very much keen to have other people have all voices heard, not just women's voices. Mm-hmm. I think we have to bring everyone into the conversation, and she was very adamant about that, which I really appreciate. I think we definitely got to our feminist journey. It got us here, and now we need to bring people in. We need to have these conversations with everybody, be intersectional, and also bring men in. I think we have to hear what they have to say, and they are also suffering under the patriarchy, and I think the show does that, and I agree with you. Maybe then the Marshall character, who kind of has this role of also trying to be good but also failing, being stopped because being limited exactly by what he can do. Maybe we can see more of him. It's very interesting to have that point of view, that counterpoint to a really nasty character.
Yeah. I feel there's a lot more we could talk about with this, and perhaps we will in the near future. But for now, I think what we'd like to leave it with is the fact that it is running until
tomorrow, to 7th.
Oh,
I don't know when you're listening to this, but it's running until the 7th of May.
And then, however, it was live streamed last night.
Yes.
And live stream is going to be available
for 2 weeks. Yes. I believe it's a live stream with a Q&A, so you might have also the Q&A at the end of the live stream.
Yes, there was a Q&A, so that means it will be available to the 19th of May. So that's 2 weeks. So you've got 2 weeks to see it if you'd like to. As I said, it's a very kind of high concept, I would say, work in progress.
Yes.
So just know that going in, and know that you're not seeing it. Don't rent out the live stream to get in and take away and have a great old laugh and
definitely not. No,
you get it's one because you want to be challenged, and you like when art does that to you.
Hey, you might go in. You should get the live stream and get a notepad. You might want to take notes. You might do research, because as I even said to Laura, I now want to read more about Salem, and I want to understand more of those women.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested to see its next iteration.
Yes, me too. Yeah. So make sure you follow Fury Theatre on Instagram, and keep up with everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
And check out. We wrote a little bit about it. We also made a reel about our experience going in. So check that out too.
So that's it for this week. Quite a busy week. We will hopefully be back next week with with something a bit more, maybe more, what's the word, lighthearted.
Or not, because you know what the next episode is.
I've forgotten. Oh yes, indeed. Yes, you're right. Yes, next week we have another review coming for you, which will not be lighthearted actually. But there we go. But yeah, thank you ever so much to Fury Theatre and to Thursday Theatre for inviting us to Abigail and Glacier Lake, respectively.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us afterwards as well. You were very nice. You're all very nice people.
Yeah, so definitely Thursday Theatre and Fury Theatre, go follow them on social media, and obviously and follow us on social media, and definitely keep an eye out for their next productions. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening. We will catch you guys next week.
And see more shows.